Trishul is in his 40s and has achieved FIRE. I'm also in my 40s and I'm not financially independent, but our lives are not that different. And now, on to our conversation.
Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area. I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today. And thanks everybody for watching and listening.
Great to be here as well. So, this is the second episode in our kind of series of financial independence versus retirement, as I have come to think of in my own head, where these are very distinct ideas that get lumped together very, very often in a lot of just research and just popular opinion. And I wanted to kind of explore this a little bit more of the difference between financial independent and retirement. And I have a few clients, in fact, you, Trishul, you are financially independent and you are not retired. You achieved financial independence fairly early. You kind of achieved FIRE, the financial independence, retire early. And I like that. I like using that phrase specifically. One, because it's pretty popular on the internet, but two, you achieved FIRE. You achieved financial independence and retired early, and then you undid the retire early part and you chose to go back to work. And so I want to kind of discuss this idea of, again, the FI versus the RE part, especially in your 40s. Kind of this is a time that's normally considered growing career. You've built up 20 years worth of skills. You can pursue the career that you want. It may not be your peak earning years that usually comes in your 50s, but this is usually a time where vast majority of people are working. And I want to kind of unpack this idea, like, I am not financially independent, and I am working. We have fairly similar careers based on our choices, and why we're having a conversation today, because we like each other and have similar careers. But we can maintain similar lifestyles even though I'm not financially independent. And so again, this is kind of, I want to discuss this like as a life stage more so than like you've reached a goal. So if you want to kind of share first, kind of, you achieve financial independence, you achieve FIRE, you went back to work. Do you remember like how old you were when you kind of originally realized, you know what, I'm going to do the work to build a business? Like you decided, I'm going back to work, kind of thing. Do you remember like how old you were when you thought of that by any chance?
All right. So, kind of the backstory, maybe a step or two before that was, I know the numbers because it was around the time my daughter was born. So I was 37 at the time. I was still at the hedge fund, and what kind of was going on around that time was I had been working, pretty hardcore for the previous 10, 15 years, kind of running on all cylinders and started to get a bit burnt out. At the same time, did a good job with saving and growing investments and things like that. So right around the time my daughter was born, I was on the maternity leave, right? Or paternity leave, sorry.
Yep.
Right? It was a solid week or two. And, I just sat down with my wife. We reviewed our financial situation, and what I related is it looks like we have enough passive income coming in to cover our living expenses. So that was actually the transition to going from full-time career mode to not. And the backstory there is essentially I decided to leave the career. I submitted my resignation and frankly had no plans at that point to do anything. So my wife and I and my newborn daughter, we rented our home here in West Palm. We hit the road. We started traveling. actually started writing the great American novel, right, with my father. I don't know if I even mentioned that, Aaron, but
No, I've not heard that one.
so yeah, I got it published. It's on Amazon. Maybe I'll include the link if I get a hit or two.
I'm now I'm genuinely curious. Is
So,
both your names on the author bylines?
no, it's just my father. So I could be
Okay.
the ghostwriter essentially, or the main writer,
The highly paid ghostwriter?
the highly productive,
Yeah.
non-compensated writer. Right. So with that was a great experience, right?
Mhm.
Doing things like that, traveling, moving around the country. And incidentally, I did speak with a recruiter around that time. It happened to be a good friend who's been, connecting with me every now and then. And this was a life event. So I was speaking with him. And he actually gave me some really good advice. He said, look, it looks like you're burned out.
Yeah.
you know, and what he said is, I'm not going to pitch you anything, any idea whatsoever. What you need to do is take at least 6 months off and do nothing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And that was probably the right advice for the time, meaning I needed to hear that. And it kind of gave me enough validation to do that. And frankly, I really didn't have a plan besides just take time off and travel, and really didn't think about entering the financial space at all. That was really low on my list of ideas. Eventually, I thought I might get bored and start doing something. And my wife even asked me, like, what would you do? And I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe I'll sell T-shirts online. That sounds like a fun thing to do. Because
Are these original creations of your own slogans and logos, or are you just taking stuff you read on the internet, putting on a T-shirt, and trying to sell it?
yeah, a mix of all that.
Okay.
My thinking at the time, and it holds today, what it really takes to make a great business is just consistent innovation and iterative improvement. And over
Mm,
time, you can turn any idea into something that's profitable if you put the right, business sense into it. And
mm.
I felt like I had it, but didn't want to do anything finance
Okay.
related for a good stint. So what actually ended up happening is I did a lot. Yep.
That actually reminds me. So I've done some studies through Sudden Money. There's both a book and a Sudden Money Institute. It's designed to help people who have windfalls. Sometimes it's inheritances, divorcees, lottery winners. But in my case, most of my clients, or not most, but a good chunk have had IPOs. So they've had company stock in pre-IPO companies. They've gone public, and they have this large windfall. And one of the things that is recommended is trying not to change anything for a year,
Hmm.
because it does take time. It takes, like you said, 6 months, but it takes that time to kind of reassess your life when you've been for so long. It's like, I need to work to earn money to support my lifestyle. I need to work to live. I
Right.
need food on the table. I need a place to live. I have to work to do that.
Yeah.
And it takes time to disassociate those,
Hmm.
that work is no longer required to live.
Right.
And it's easy to make kind of too drastic of changes too quickly, and just giving yourself time to kind of think about that. What the recruiter and what you're sharing share what I've seen through both research and work with clients as well, as I've tried to kind of recommend. Just because you're numerically financially independent, let's hold off and like spend some time reassessing life, and but go to work tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's a sabbatical notion as well.
Yeah,
It's something
yeah,
where essentially it's encouraged in many cultures, if not so much in the US.
yeah. I agree that that's a normal-ish sabbatical time would be 6 months. So I agree with that, where you can kind of use that time to assess, do you want to go back to it? Do you feel refreshed and you're reinvigorated to go back to this thing that you used to love at some point?
Hmm.
Or is it that soul searching of, no, I actually really hate this. I need this break to realize I got to go in a completely different direction.
Yeah. I'll throw another buzzword in there as well. You could even call it a midlife crisis. So
Yeah, yeah.
that might be part of it.
Uh, actually, the way you say that, I have never thought about this until just now. Like, I wonder if the traditional midlife crisis in the U.S. is just that burnout feeling. Like
Yeah.
people have been working
Yeah.
for 20 years, and they're finally at a point where they have a little extra money, and like they still feel a stress and don't know what to do with it. Like they don't know how to cope with that stress of the burnout, and they have money that they didn't in their 20s, and they go buy a sports car.
Yeah.
Or yeah, that's I had not thought about the association between work burnout and the midlife crisis, but that
Yeah.
probably correlates pretty well.
Yeah, and there's something else I haven't mentioned. So about a year or two before that, I actually had a friend pass away, and he was a
Oh,
college friend, my age and all that, and he got in a car. He got hit by a car, and boy, is that eye opening, right?
yeah.
So here we are, all our friends or peers used to be, college buddies, where everybody was enjoying life and doing all these things, and we all went off into the corporate world, and we're just so busy trying to make progress in our careers, and then it just you kind of get blindsided by something like that, and it really makes you think, oh boy, this is a lot more finite and fragile than we might expect.
The closest thing I had to that, this is not what I was planning on sharing in today's conversation, but um, we had a chocolate lab. She made it to 14 years old. She
Yeah,
passed away early 2020. I remember
I
because
recall.
2020 is that one year that everyone remembers very clearly. I know this. She passed away before COVID hit, so she passed away like February, I think.
Yeah.
And my middle daughter, uh, she would have been 7 at the time. Uh, she was taking that pretty hard.
Mhm.
That kind of this dog who was older than her she was. This dog had been around for her entire life,
Mhm.
was passing away, and she was trying to like ask me about like the meaning of life kind of thing. She was really having trouble to like again for a 7-year-old to associate like death and life and uh it's her first time dealing with mortality.
Mhm.
And so I remember telling her, that's like, well, we're going to try and keep making memories together. Like that's what we're going to try to do together is making memories. And she's actually brought that up a few times over the years. And she'll actually, when she's probably 8 or 9, it's like a year or two later, like, Daddy, are we making memories? Like we're doing something fun kind of thing as a
Yeah.
family. It's like, yeah. And now she's a little more confident, like that we're making memories today. Like she's really internalized that idea, but it took again like a death is like death of a family member. That the death of a long-term pet feels that way. Is it hit really hard, and uh that's like I still think about that of like it was not as eye-opening for me directly because I've had pets die in our family in the past, but seeing my daughter's interpretation of that was really eye-opening for me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's it just brings a lot of things into perspective. It gives this understanding that the amount of time that we have is certainly finite. I mean, you can grow wealth up to infinity, but
Yeah,
you can't grow time, right? It's a clock
yeah.
that ticks. It's a what is it? It's an hourglass that drains out. It never refills itself.
So this actually, so I think that kind of helps answer the question of why you left your job to
Yeah.
pursue fire. But I think and coincidentally, I think I was 35 when I started my business.
All right.
So kind of similar-ish age there. But now I'm thinking for you, kind of what led you to going back to work? So and I want to kind of keep this within the lens of, did you ever consider yourself retired?
Yeah.
And did you consider yourself like, I'm now choosing to go back to work? Because starting a business is not easy, and uh, there's a lot of extra work and registration and requirements that you have to go through. I think when you started, you didn't have the CFP designation, but you did the work to get it. So
Right.
like you're choosing to take on a lot of hard work to get to where you are today. So I want to kind of think about, like, did you consider yourself retired? And was there a I don't know if like a thought process or a shift of like, okay, I'm going back to work.
So it evolved, over time. It wasn't a split change in mindset, but essentially a few of the building blocks to that transition were I started traveling around, visiting friends and family in other locations. And, interestingly enough, I started learning about financial missteps that were going on with people I cared about.
Mm,
Meaning, I was learning from friends and family that they were making decisions that I thought didn't make the best financial sense.
mm,
Either they were buying products that didn't make sense, or they weren't putting enough in their retirement accounts. They were chasing the next best thing, right? Making um, large bets on risky propositions. A lot of things where I realized, if they had done some things that were just closer to what I had done in my own life, it would
mhm,
make that much of a huge impact. And it's a little frustrating being in that position because you can't actually just go up to somebody, even if you're close, and say, you shouldn't do that. Like, that you should, all this is wrong and you got to do it this way and all that.
yeah.
Uh, it was
I,
a
I
bit of
do
a
want to like
grind.
this is a really good lesson. I try to teach my kids. If you attack someone, like, you're doing this wrong, the
Yeah.
natural human response is to get defensive. No, I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm fine. Like, I'm good. And so, like you said, it's you can't go up to someone and say, "Hey, here's the mistakes you're making,"
Yeah.
because one, that is not very tactful, like just socially, but two, it's not going to work anyways. It's not going to
Yeah.
get any change.
Hmm.
And so you have to kind of come from a place of empathy if
Right.
you want to have a chance to hopefully help them.
And not only that, like, you might see somebody for an hour. It's not really
Yeah.
time to open up the books, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly,
it's
exactly.
enough to realize things don't seem right.
Yeah.
Um, but at that point, it would just be purely unsolicited if I
Mhm.
threw anything out there. So what ended up happening is I just told myself, well, to keep busy, I'll just start the blog. I'll start writing about it, and
Okay.
I figured at least I'm putting my best thinking out there, right? If anybody wants to listen, it'll provide some benefit, and that would be how I could also keep busy. But part of this was when I made this transition, I essentially did take a blank sheet of paper and said, how do I want my life to look from here?
Mhm.
Like, how do I want to fill up my day? How do I want it to be engaging and fulfilling and feel like I've accomplished something?
Mm.
There's only so much you can travel and see new things and you know m- do fancy adventurous things like day in and day out. It can be a little grating. And I realized some notion of structure was sensible. Part of the structure that we thought about was, taking daily walks and exercising more and doing hobbies and things like that.
What do you mean by grading?
Well, so, like, for example, we thought, let's plan out a bunch of different places that we can see. And we filled up a calendar and we actually
Okay.
started checking them off. And after a while, we realized, oh boy, this is too much. Like,
Okay.
just being on the
Okay.
road this long and not having a place to call, home,
Yeah.
it felt quite uncomfortable after a while. I remember the consulting life where when I was single and young, for a time period, it felt okay to, like, hey, I'm in a new hotel, a new city, a new whatever per diem, right?
Yeah.
Like all of that jazz. But we also realized having a young kid and travel isn't also quite ideal. We realized kids do like structure.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not true for all kids, but we realized, at least for my child, she did a lot better when we stuck to a routine where
Yeah.
there was some consistency day to day. So that was also part of it. And frankly, we did better too. So we started engineering a lifestyle that we thought could be more repeatable. And I'd say that the next thing that we also considered is, when we first made this transition to financial independence and leaving the career, the way the math worked is we had to be pretty meager about things. We had a set
Oh,
budget. We had to say, if we do this, we can make the transition, but we got to do
mm,
this. We got to keep the
yeah,
box
yeah,
nice
yeah,
and
yeah,
closed. But then also thinking about it, we realize, hey, if we have some sort of side income coming in and we don't pull out so much from the nest egg, based on just the way the math works with compounding, our nest egg, it would double every 10 years, roughly at the market rate. We've talked about this in other
yeah,
conversations. Meaning, if we're living off X, if we don't touch that next nest egg for 10 years, we can live off 2X. And all of a
yeah,
sudden, when things are very tight, things can be quite comfortable, right? Over
yeah,
that 10-year gap, just by providing some sort of auxiliary income.
yeah.
And it didn't have to be extravagant. It just had to cover daily expenses, meaning we're not trying to hit home runs here. We're just trying to do something that provides some sense of enjoyment, but also brings in some income.
So I'm gonna use round numbers to kind of keep some math easy. If you had $1 million and you're using a 3% withdrawal rate, it's like 30K. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, it's possible to keep your expenses under 30K.
Yeah.
Maybe you can use a 4% withdrawal rate. That's a manageable, but there's some risk there. But
Yeah.
it's like, okay, if we can just make 30K,
Yeah.
we don't need to touch the million.
Exactly.
And you
And
can double those numbers, like 2 million to be 60K, but like same way, like you don't need to make that much to keep your, again, kind of meager lifestyle expenses taken care of to
right.
not touch the nest egg.
Yeah. That was the rough impetus for thinking about income, right? Just
Okay.
pulling it into the picture. And then what it actually ended up being is I started putting out the blog. People actually started asking me, like friends and family, about questions.
Okay.
And then it dawned on me, well, why don't I just set up some sort of business where I'll put a calendar online, somebody can book an hour with me, I'll talk for a bit, and
Okay.
they'll pay me. And nice and easy, right?
Yeah.
That's the business I thought I was creating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good helpful transition where it's, and I think that there's a couple themes there. One, and it's actually not the themes I was expecting, but one is, yes, fire is achievable, but you just have to make a little bit extra
Uh-huh.
to make my life just a little nicer.
Yeah.
Uh, two is, because you were financially independent and like we only need to make this much. Again, smaller amounts. We only need to
Mhm.
make this much to make our lives just a little easier. You get to be really choosy. Like you get
Mhm.
to choose the career or the job that you pursue, and it applies to both your wife and you. But it's
Yep.
like you get to just like, I don't need to grow my business to have an IPO 10 years down the road. I'm not.
Right.
I just, and I don't even need to be successful by the terms of most other small business owners. I just need like enough to make minimum wage kind of thing, but I work half the
Yeah.
time.
Right. Yeah. It was a lifestyle business from the beginning, and my
Yeah.
target was, how do I keep busy for 2 to 3 hours a day? That was really it.
And I think the next theme there is that you were already writing the blog.
Yeah.
You were already doing the work of doing it. Does kind of about it. You're already doing the thing, and then people came to you like, "Hey, can I pay you for advice?" Kind of something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really really important distinction. Um, there have been a few times, I I've given advice to friends that's very similar. Like one was in our 20s. A friend was like, "Oh, I've been writing a lot on our blog." We actually had a blog together that I'm almost embarrassed to mention.
I didn't know
Um,
this.
uh,
Gonna have
I'll
to do
share it with you, and I'll let you decide if we put it in the show notes. But
okay.
he's like, "I've been writing this, but I want to get a laptop to be able to sit on the couch and write more
Right.
because like he just didn't have a good laptop for that." And I was very clear. Again, this is 15 plus years ago. I was like, "No, don't spend the money thinking that will help you do it more. You got to be doing it so much more that the laptop makes that part easier." And it's an important distinction of you got to be doing the thing first before you are going to invest time, energy, money, something like that into making it more.
Mhm.
And because you were writing the blog first, you were having these thoughts, trying to share them, trying to help people already, that made sense to try and build this career. And that's different from I'm going to build this career and then I'll do the work of writing the blog. And I think that's probably the thing I want to get to for today. And I'll share my story a little bit in a few minutes. But if you're financially independent in your 40s, you need to find that thing that energizes you, that you're going to do anyways, whether you're making money or not.
Yeah.
That's your challenge in life if you're financially independent in your 40s. Whether, especially if you have kids in the house and like you're not, like you even said, you were traveling so much that checking off the list of things, of places to go see became more difficult than it was worth. The cost exceeded the benefit.
Right.
And so I think this is the kind of key is, again, if you're going to try and be, I want to kind of, I don't know if I'm like going to coin a new phrase, but like if you want to be successfully financially independent, and it's not the emphasis on the financial independence, or not on the financial part, it's successful on the independent part.
Yeah.
If you want to be successfully financially independent, you need to find that thing that you're going to do, whether it makes money or not.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that you can make money off of it, great. That like makes life a little easier, a little nicer.
Mhm.
But I think that's the key here is you're writing the blog first without expecting to make any money from that. And then it energizes you. You're doing it consistently enough. You're starting to get some traction. And like, then, okay, here's what I can build my business around.
Yeah. And incidentally, I have thought about what if I started the t-shirt business, right? What if I'd done that instead? And I think I made the right choice. And here's kind of why. What I really wanted is something to do that I enjoyed, right?
Mhm.
And businesses are good because you have this ability to use your creativity and build upon something and have it grow.
Yep.
But here's the distinction. I don't know if we've talked about this, but there's a difference between a practice and a business, right?
You have mentioned that in the past, but I'd like to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, let me add some color. So the traditional sense of a business is the bigger the business gets, the less you have to work and the more efficient the money comes in, meaning it scales.
Okay.
Such that at some point the business is making 10 times more, but you're working less and less and less for each dollar that comes in because you have employees and
Yeah.
you have higher revenues and scale and things like that. Now, that's different from a practice. A practice, you kind of think about a doctor's office or a
Okay.
dentist or a lawyer, a law practice, right? The notion there is um, the main income from the business is somebody doing actual work where
Okay.
it takes their time. Their time is the biggest commitment to the business that drives the revenue and the income of the business.
I
And
would
if
add
that,
in you have expertise, you have
yeah,
education. Like not anyone can just choose to be a dentist. They have to go to dental school. Same thing.
Yeah.
So there's the even among lawyers who have gone to law school and passed the bar, there's still some lawyers who have greater expertise in one particular area. So you're willing to pay for that expertise in addition to their time.
Right. And the more you practice, the more your expertise goes up.
Yeah.
But there's a cap, right? It's limited to one human's time, essentially. Whereas a business can scale infinitely, right? You can be
Okay. I see what you're saying.
hundreds of thousands of people under one umbrella organization. Yes, you can scale a law practice, but again, that changes it from you practicing to you being a business owner and
Yeah.
scaling it, right? And where I was going with this is I actually realized, yeah, I don't want a business. I don't want to scale this. I want to do something that I enjoy that I can keep doing. And that's why I think I did land in the right spot. I landed on a practice where I can spend a couple hours a day working with clients to make their lives better.
I like that. And I think that's a really good distinction. That comes up with financial advisors all the time of, do you want to keep working with clients? Do you want to talk to them? And for myself, I've become a little self-aware that on the marketing side, I'm probably just okay. Not really great on scaling, but I really love the one-on-one conversations I have with my clients. And I feel like that's where I thrive. I can genuinely listen to them, understand their situation, understand the kind of the pros and cons in their own life, the intersection between feelings and what they feel like they should do. So like one of the clients I'm working with, we're probably going to try to sell a property that'll help them retire, but this property's been in the family for multiple generations, and they don't have kids, so they're not looking to pass this on to the next generation. But there's still this kind of this feeling of like, am I letting down my grandfather who's passed away a couple decades ago by selling this property that's been in the family for years? And it's not a right or wrong kind of thing, but it's acknowledging that it can feel selfish. And like this is a challenge that comes up all the time with people. Like, if I choose to make my life better, am I choosing myself over some other thing that I should be doing? And this comes up in a lot of conversations, and I like to think I do pretty well in terms of helping clients deal with the feelings of what they feel like they should be doing versus what the lifestyle they want is. But I can't scale that. I would be, maybe I can. I don't know how to, but I also have no interest in scaling that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to have these good one-on-one conversations.
Right.
And yeah, it doesn't scale.
And on purpose, right? That's why we enjoy that. That's the key. So essentially, that was the transition. I figured if I can keep myself busy, and I've managed to maintain that over the last, it's been like 7 years since I left the career, right? We're at 2024 now. That was 2017, I guess, when my daughter was born. But the impetus for growing the business was essentially providing that gap for a couple hours a day in my life. And I had no real pressure to reach any sort of revenue goal at any sort of expediency. I just realized as long as I do this consistently, day in or week in, day out, or whatever it happens to be, over years, I'll make that progress. And it did take probably twice as long as somebody would have taken had they, devoted their full efforts to it. But it didn't matter, right? The pressure was off as long as I eventually got there and I enjoyed the process of getting there. That was enough for me.
So I think that's probably a good place to transition and kind of get back to my side of the story, where I started my lifestyle practice that my short answer is I want to be able to coach my kids' sports teams. They get out of school, and I want to be able to devote every afternoon to coaching one of them or multiple kids. And so I knew I wanted to again start my business to give that kind of time flexibility, but also wanted to be able to grow my income. And so I had to be a little more intentional than you did of I do need to grow my revenue. I do need to make sure that this is growing. And
Mhm.
so I still get to kind of use my time the way I want
Mhm.
and still kind of get to live the lifestyle I want. And I really, again, still love those conversations I have with clients. That was still like really fundamental to me that I did not want to grow a business where I was no longer meeting with clients.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that I'm doing good work for my clients and I'm coaching my kids' sports teams. And they're like,
Yeah.
those are oversimplifying it. But I do have to like take this a little more seriously. So that might be the difference. When I say our lives aren't that different, I mean that we both have the time flexibility to spend time with our families, spend time with spouses, kids. We
Mhm.
get to travel when we want. We get to go snowboarding when we want. Like we have a variety of how we spend our time can feel very similar,
Yeah.
but I need to be a little more intentional and a little more focused on growing my revenue to maintain the lifestyle I want, whereas you don't. And so that's why the if there had a kind of distinction between financial independence
Uh-huh.
in your 40s and those who kind of live the same lifestyle, but they aren't financially independent,
Yeah.
maybe that tiny bit of pressure is still there. And it might be like that's the pressure that pushes you to do more. Like
Mhm.
it's not necessarily a bad pressure. We've actually had that conversation in the past
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
sometimes you need a little bit of stress in your life. You get to choose what the stress is. You get to choose the challenges that you take on. You don't
Right.
want things to be too easy. But I have kind of chosen this where, yeah, I have to put in the time to make sure that my clients are happy and I'm still growing.
Yeah.
And you can take longer. You don't, and so I think that's probably the kind of distinction is um if you because you do, which is the correlating factor because you don't feel the pressure, do you grow slower, or is it because you just don't care enough? Like which is the cause and which is the effect
You
kind of
know,
thing.
I think for me at least the growth was what it was. I just put in the time, and whatever happened happened at whatever speed it wanted to
Okay.
happen. I think that's what it came down to. Uh, like uh, uh, even where I am now, I'm pretty much at capacity, so I don't plan on growing much more from here. So
Okay.
the notion is I've filled up the book. I have my 2 to 3 hours filled with client time, which is what I was going for. I've done enough automation in the business so that it's running pretty efficiently.
Okay.
Yeah.
That might be the difference where I have hired a client service associate. I am listening to technologies that help me do kind of the non-meeting work a little more efficiently. I do
Mhm.
have a couple consultants, so I do have to be a little more efficient to be able to have a little more capacity. So maybe like that's you're I have chosen a path where I do have to think businessy,
Yeah.
not just practicey. So like you have a lifestyle practice, I have a lifestyle business. If you want to try like
It's a spectrum. You're more on the business, or you're
yeah.
closer to the business than I am.
So the last thing I want to get to is the intentional decisions that kind of lead to our two respective paths.
Mhm.
Where I want to go back to like which decisions do you remember were truly intentional, and your like fundamental beliefs or reasons why you're doing this? Because for me, again, is that like the flexibility to coach my kids sports team. Again, I want to take them skiing. I want to spend time with them traveling. I want to show them the rest of the country, the rest of the world. I want to be there for them to watch all the things that they do, even when I'm not coaching. So like prioritizing family was really important. And I didn't need to be financially independent to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the kind of big lessons I try to teach clients is financial independence is not the end goal. It is not I'm waiting until I'm financially independent to do these things. It's like, what are the things that are really important? And let's figure out how to do those now, whether you're financially independent or not. Like, those are the good life priorities. Because you don't need to financially independent to be happy, feel fulfilled. And sometimes, even if you are financially independent, you're not happy or fulfilled. Like those are not the same. There's not even a correlation there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I try to stress with my clients. And it usually comes down to like big company stock decisions of do they hold or do they hold on for future upside, or do they sell some now? And usually like, what's the lifestyle you want?
Mm-hmm.
How do we use this to help you pursue that?
Yeah.
Pursue that lifestyle. But for you, like, can you think of some intentional decisions that you made along the way with your lifestyle in mind?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mentioned it all started with a blank sheet of paper. Like, what does my ideal day look like, and what is my ideal week? And we've covered this in those
We've done
conversations titled with
the
those names.
the Kinder exercise: ideal day, ideal week, ideal year. Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly where the business fit in is a few hours of work a day, and um, you know, part of me really thinks that when I was in the standard 9 to 5, there was a lot of hours, but if you really boil it down to the key times when you're actually doing really good work, there's a lot of waste, right?
I have a quick story, but about that. But I want you to finish this.
The notion is if you cut out the commuting, if you cut out the water cooler chats, if you cut out everything and you just condense it to the pure things that are going to drive the business forward, then it may not be so bad to really get a few hours of solid work in and day out. So that was the target, right?
Okay.
It felt like aligning that with the rest of the day that included a bunch of other things that I wanted to do. The essential overarching goal was I wanted to look forward to every day.
Okay.
Whether it be a Friday, a Saturday, or even a Monday. We talked about this. Like I look forward to Mondays now. That was the big shift from being in the corporate world to being in, this is in a corporation. So being in the non-corporate world, I look forward to every day. In fact, Mondays are awesome. Right? Why shouldn't they be? And it's also something where I'm upfront with my clients. I say this is a lifestyle business. I intentionally do meetings 3 days a week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I leave Monday to catch up on client work, that I'm working with our clients, and Friday to do administrative work. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'll meet with clients in the middle of the day. And it just, everything aligns together, and it helps build a pretty repeatable picture of what I can consider of an ideal day or an ideal week, where there's enough variation, but enough similarity to keep things exciting enough, but also
you have your routine, you have your structure.
Yeah, there's also enough structure and routine, so it feels like I'm not floating off into just la la land.
The quick story I wanted to share. I have noticed over the last few years that I have not been spending as much time doing fantasy football research. So I remember like we did a podcast episode I tried to teach you. I was like, why am I not like spending the amount of time that I used to? And my realization was, before I started my business, I was in an office from 9 to 5, yeah, it's easy to spend some time while sitting in the office doing fantasy football research. That's what
Yeah.
that's what everyone does. But now because I have been more intentional with my time and kind of condensed. Like I play pickleball in the morning. I do
Yeah.
work until kids get out of school, and then sometimes I'll have a meeting around them. But usually around 4 o'clock, I'm either walking the dog or coaching kids sports teams. And
Mhm.
so like I've intentionally like condensed my time. So I have to get the work I used to do in like a normal 8-hour office job into like my 5 to 6 hours in the middle of the day kind of thing.
Mhm.
So like I don't have time to do fantasy football research. I have to do that at night after kids go to bed. Because again, it's that like acknowledging that yes, there was waste in time
Yeah.
in the past, and most 9 to 5s have something like that. And I
Mhm.
have cut out the waste time. So I have to actually be very concise with my working time because I have chosen uh, spending time with kids after school, usually with coaching sports, and pickleball in the morning over fantasy football. Like
Mhm.
like like that's kind of like was not a that's one like it was not an active decision,
Yeah.
but at each point like I prioritize what's the thing that's important to me.
Yeah.
And like, oh, fantasy football, I had plenty of time for it in the past, but apparently it's a lower priority in my life without it took me just recently to realize that yeah, it's just a lower priority in my life.
Yeah. I can probably say I probably do doom scroll less. I probably do.
Oh, because you don't have time to do it.
Well, I like you said, I prioritize other things. Like I
Yeah.
do go to the gym. I do play video games. That's part of my priority, right? I
Yeah.
do, do things more intentionally for sure.
So as you think about kind of the next few years,
Yeah.
because I know one of the things we've talked about in the past is you want to be moving forward. You want to have some challenge that you're taking on, that you're growing. It doesn't have to be career wise. It doesn't have to be like, but you have some feeling of self improvement. If I'm getting better at this, what do
Mhm.
you think of for yourself moving forward?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So what's kind of happened over my career is I have transitioned a good amount. Essentially, after 3 or 4 years, I seem to um not necessarily get tired, but things get a little too routine, right? With whatever I'm doing, and I make a bold transition. It seems. So the first part of my career, I was a consultant. I did that for 3 to 4 years, and then I transitioned to running a derivatives team, out in Southeast Asia, and I did that for a few years, and then I did hedge funds for a couple years, and then now I did financial planning for a couple
Yeah.
years. So yeah, it did occur to me, oh boy, now I gotta find something. But the big difference this time is I don't feel like I need to run away from this. I think
Mm,
in the past I felt a bit trapped because I doubt I would. It didn't feel like I could say in that position, I don't want to do this for 8 hours a day. I want to do it for one or
yeah.
two, and I
Yeah.
want to say all the rules the way I want it to be. And it just doesn't quite work like that, or at least the positions I found myself in
Yeah.
didn't lend itself to that type of flexibility. So, for the last few weeks, I picked up, Aaron, I mentioned this to you just kind of offline. I'm doing a lot of automation stuff because I thought,
Mhm.
hey, this is cool. Let me start learning about using GPTs and connecting it up to all of these backend systems to see if I
Yeah.
can send an email and then it'll sing me a song, when I wake up, whatever it happens to be. So, yeah, I've been digging into that. But essentially, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've also picked up maybe a half a dozen new hobbies that I
Okay.
didn't really plan on concentrating on before that time. But here I am doing these different things like the woodworking or the exercise or
Mm,
the kayaking, whatever it happens to be.
okay.
Yeah.
So, it is there a I don't want to say theme or like philosophy, like, but it's something that you are intentionally working on for that moving forward idea?
So I remember when I was younger, there were a lot of shoulds. Like, hey, I
Mhm.
probably should be doing this, right? And the few things that always stuck out are, my nutrition wasn't that great, and it was pretty bad for like most of my life. I was a big should, or I'm not even doing any exercise at all.
Yeah,
A big
yeah.
should there. I think to be frank, I think I'm running out of shoulds. Like, I think,
I
which is
totally
not a
agree with
bad
that.
thing.
I totally agree with that. I really don't like the word should. I feel
Yeah,
that anytime a client's like, I think we should do this, like, why? Like that's like almost like my trigger word kind of thing. It's like, oh, I really want to dig deep. Why do you think you should do that?
yeah,
But I still want to kind of push a little bit. It's like because again, I think this idea of I'm getting better at this
yeah.
uh, is really important. That feeling of fulfillment and self-worth kind of idea. Like, what are you working on? What are you contributing to? Like, so that's why like maybe you need a little time to figure that part out. But I'm still kind of curious. Like, what's next?
Yeah. I'm in that transition spot where I normally do pick something else and start to run with it. But I think there is a difference this time because I'm really not running away from something. Right?
Mm,
I think it does feel different, and as far as the shoulds, there were big things that I wanted to get in line that I just didn't prioritize earlier in my
yeah,
life, and for whatever reason, it was what it was. But frankly, um, you know, as far as those items go, I've done a good amount of those. I think they're
yeah.
doing okay. And now it's more of, higher up on that was it the hierarchy of
Maslow's
needs?
hierarchy of needs. Yeah,
So what was the top of that? Where are we now?
self-actualization. I think.
Yeah, I gotta learn how to meditate in front of like a
Okay.
tree or do some retreats in the woods with some bongos. That might be part of it.
Uh, maybe in the future I'll tell you how like I relate sports to that feeling. But
Okay.
um, okay, I'm gonna let you off the hook for today. That you don't have anything that any kind of theme that you're growing towards other than like
Yeah.
learning more about
What
AI.
I will say though, to be honest, the exercise has come a long way, but that's going to be a lifelong thing for me. It's not going
Mhm.
to be something that lets go. Same thing with the nutrition. I've come a long way with that. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Aaron. I've tracked every calorie I've eaten for the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh wow, no, I knew that you had taken up running. I knew that like you know what? Do you want to run a marathon? Does that appeal to you at all?
Well, so the goals with the exercise and nutrition have been longevity oriented.
Okay,
What kind of actions can I take to increase my health span, right?
okay,
So I think I'm on a good track with that. Same thing with the business. The business isn't going anywhere. The practice, sorry.
yeah.
The practice isn't going anywhere. I will continue to practice and refine. But as far as other big ticket items, I got to think about that a little bit.
Okay. And again,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna challenge you to come up with something specific. I'm more like more of a theme
Yeah.
of this is what I'm working on kind of thing.
Yeah.
I will share that uh, since my wife was laid off, our plan as a couple had always been like I want to grow my business to enough where she can stop working anyways,
Hmm.
and this has kind of accelerated that. So it's like I am now a little more intentional about growing revenue to make up for her lost income, so she doesn't have to go back to work. That's kind of the so even though I I acknowledge the not quite hypocrisy of it, but like I said, it doesn't have to be about career and income, like, but that's actually my specific thing right now.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the extra challenge I'm adding to that is still making sure I am designing a business I can do well past 60, like maybe into my 70s, where
Hmm.
I still have the conversations like with clients I find fulfilling, and that's kind of our current household plan. And there's like another combination of, if I can have the income that long anyways, I don't need as big a nest egg to be financial independent. I'll get there. I'm confident because I'm a financial planner and I know what I'm doing. But it's like, if I can design this business where I can have that income longer
Right.
and still live the life I want,
Yeah.
then I'll be fine down the road. But like, I do want to see this growth so my wife doesn't have to go back to work.
Yeah.
That's kind of the key for me right now, is that kind of theme.
Yeah. I think you're past this stage, but was there ever a time where you had to think of a backup plan? Or did it
Um,
even cross your mind, like, what if things didn't go as planned?
I, yes, but all the way back when I started.
Right.
So it's like, it was one of those things of, okay, I'd saved up enough to buy into the ownership of the prior firm I was at. Those negotiations kind of fell through, so that became my runway. Also helped that my wife was actually getting several promotions and raises. So the first few years we needed a little bit, but not as much as we had planned.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my business to the point where, even if I went back to work as an employee of another firm, I wouldn't make as much as I make now.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's one thing. But I never had to get serious about the backup plan. But yes, at the beginning, the backup plan is like, okay, if this doesn't work, the business doesn't quite get to those levels, then yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to work for a financial advisory firm and work the 9 to 5, and either work as just a financial planner or maybe still as an advisor, but like a servicing advisor that someone else does the business development. Those would
Yeah.
have all been possibilities.
Yeah.
So
So the alignment I kind of see is we both independently had a strong understanding of our financial situations, right? That gave
yeah,
us confidence to make these leaps. They weren't
yeah.
leaps of faith, right? They were leaps founded on a really fundamental understanding of where we are and where things could go, and contingencies from there.
That's a good point. It's like my backup plan was still my future income potential.
Hmm.
Like, I knew I had the skills. I already had my CFP for a long time. I knew I could have gone to work as a financial planner for a larger firm. Your
Yeah.
backup plan was being financially independent already.
Hmm.
So that's interesting. And that's what most, I think that's probably my one thing I want to end on. Most people think your backup plan has to be you're already financially independent.
Yeah.
When realistically, especially in your 40s, if you have, like, right around age 40, you still have 20 years of earning potential to age 60, much less if you work till 65 or 70. But that future earning potential is often greater than your net worth at age 40. And while it's scary to think, oh, if this doesn't work, I'm going to be destitute and never able to work again.
Yeah.
Realistically, like, if you acknowledge, like, yes, this might work and set me back a few years. I've lost a few years of savings and or even spent some down. If I go back to work at another firm,
Yeah.
then I go back on the regular track of maxing out my 401k for throughout my 40s and 50s,
All right.
plus other savings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what, like, it's okay for your backup plan to be future income potential.
Hmm.
That's risky. There are risks associated with that. But it's okay for your backup plan to be future income potential.
Yeah. Good stuff, Aaron.
This is a good one. I like this one. Thank you very much for sharing your story of pursuing fire, achieving fire, and then undoing fire.
I got to see that blog, Aaron, too. So I'm gonna
Oh,
hold you to that.
I'll send it to you. I'll let you decide if we put it in the show notes.
Okay. I think they gotta see it. I gotta see it too.
This is
Um,
like old high school photos that you're embarrassed by, like this. Okay, I'll put it in. I'll put it in the show notes.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Trishul.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and do subscribe, and do check out the previous episode where we did dig deeper into the starting of the notion here about retirement and financial independence. And thanks everybody for listening and watching. Bye.
Bye. We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical as no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.